In ancient times, there was a man traveling in his carriage, and suddenly he was attacked by goblins while he was helpless. And when he thought it was the end, he found goblin hunters appearing out of nowhere to save him and eliminate them, and indeed they managed to crush hundreds of them. Meanwhile, a pathetic boy named Fate was standing guard at the gate of the royal palace, and he was so hungry that he couldn't hide the sound of his scandalous belly. And when he saw the goblin hunters returning after successfully completing their mission, he thought that there was no way he could become one of them one day because of his insignificant skill that he was born with, gluttony, in addition to his worthless stats. He felt he should be grateful that he had a job at all and that someone would hire him. In the evening, the holy knights of the Valeric family were walking around the city, known as a trio of bad boys for their misbehavior. On their way, one of them dropped a fruit, which kept rolling until it reached the shoe of a knight named Hado. When the owner of the fruit apologized to him, he kicked it away indifferently, and then the knight Memel warned him that he would suffer serious consequences if he deliberately insulted the holy knights. Raphael asked them to continue on their way and stop messing with the weak, while the goblin hunters resented their arrogant behavior. When they reached the gate, Fate was still suffering from the sounds of his starving belly, so they laughed at him and said that it seemed as if they were not feeding him. Then Raphael gave him some money for guarding the gate for them today, and threw it on the ground in front of him and ordered him to pick it up like a slave. When he went down to collect his money from the ground, Hado stepped on his hand, and they began to humiliate and insult him to amuse themselves. Hado kicked him away like a stray animal and told him that he should be grateful that scum like him could make money thanks to the charity of the holy knights. Then Roxy, the knight, appeared and ordered them to stop what they were doing. Their behavior was unbecoming of a holy knight who had once sworn to protect his citizens, and guarding the gate was one of the duties of a holy knight. Raphael justified that providing work for the destitute is also the duty of the holy knights. Then they decided to withdraw and leave Fate alone after he had been beaten and humiliated enough. So Roxy approached him and helped him get up, and then he noticed that Raphael was giving him an angry look as he left. When he thanked her for her help, she told him that they were colleagues when it came to guarding the gate, and asked him to hand her the flag so she could begin her patrol, and asked him to come and tell her if anything like this happened again. Fate got confused and told her he was used to it and decided to leave quickly. He then went to the bar to eat his poor quality food as he had money for, and remembered Roxy's request and Raphael's angry look and decided not to involve her in the matter so as not to make things worse for him. His thoughts were interrupted by the tavern owner, who noticed his shabby condition and that he had been beaten as usual, and told him that he would die at this rate because of the hard work and violence practiced against him, so he continued to eat until he finished and left after thanking him for the food. All the way, he flogged himself for his useless skill that he gained from the goddess, and wished that he had been born with a useful skill, not necessarily a holy knight, but at least a warrior or a merchant or even a craftsman, and he realized that he would remain a failure forever because of his inevitable fate. Then he noticed a group of thieves sneaking into the palace through the walls, so he decided to go to warn Roxy, and she asked him to take over the guard for her and went to arrest the thieves, and Fate could hear the sounds of swords clashing and thieves screaming inside, and then the sounds suddenly stopped. Fate thought it was over before he was surprised by one of the thieves rushing out injured. He panicked and almost ran away, but he stopped for a moment and thought that he might cause trouble for Roxy if he left the gate guard, so he decided to confront the thief and not let him escape. And when he realized that he was injured, he realized that he would be easy to stop him and did not hesitate to stick the banner blade into his body and cause his death. Fate felt that something was wrong inside his body and soon realized that his skill had been activated. His stats had increased dramatically and he had gained 2 new skills. Then Roxy approached him, worried about him, and when she held his hand, she was surprised that he could read her mind. He told her that he was fine. When she let go of his hand and decided to report what happened to her superiors, he found that he could not read her mind now. He then told her that she could take credit for her success in arresting the thieves and asked her not to let Raphael know that he had beaten one of the thieves so as not to cause him trouble. Roxy decided to express her gratitude to him for her help in catching the thieves and suggested that he work for the Hart family instead of dying under the Holy Knights, and told him that his future was in his own hands, thinking that he had a choice between a future where he would be treated like scum or a bright future where he could work with Roxy, who would treat him as if he were her equal. He accepted her offer immediately. When he got home, he thought about how his stats had gone up and he had gained new skills, and he realized that the 2 skills were recognition and telepathy when he remembered reading Roxy's thoughts beforehand. He then thought that with his current stats, he might be able to defeat the monsters and decided the next day to go buy a sword and learn to fight. But he only had 2 silver pieces, so the shopkeeper refused to sell him the swords. The merchant told him that he could buy one of the inferior weapons in the barrel, and he realized that it was better than nothing. When he started examining the swords, he found that the recognition skill is specialized to know the stats and abilities of everything in front of him, and found that the hardness and strength level of all the swords is 0, which makes them useless, and the sword will shatter in 1 blow. Then a strange-looking sword caught his attention, and despite its shabby condition, he felt that they were similar, as this sword is special, but it is treated like garbage, and soon he was surprised that the sword makes a sound, and when he used the recognition skill, he He found that the sword is called Greed. Then he heard him asking him to buy it and pledge to be worthy of his service. Then he was surprised when he called him Greed and asked him how he knew about his skill, and he told him that they were similar in many things, so he decided to buy the sword with all his savings and felt happy to own the sword. Meanwhile, news arrived that Roxy was trying to recruit Fate to the Heart family of Holy Knights. Menel suggested that they teach her a lesson for acting without consulting them, but Raphael thought it was not worth the trouble, as there are many others who can be replaced, and their family and the Heart family are part of the 5 families that support the kingdom, and there is no point in complicating things between them. Then he decided to go to the military district, and she was curious to ask him why he was excited about his studies in the military district, and he told her that he wanted to know the path to immortality, and on the other side, Fate went to an empty square to try practicing with his new sword. Suddenly, Greed warned him that danger was coming. A goblin appeared out of nowhere to attack him. Without realizing it, Fate swung his sword at it and managed to cut it in half, activating his gluttony skill and gaining the power boost skill. Then he found himself surrounded by hundreds of goblins attacking him all at once, but he was able to fight them off and tear them to pieces with his skill and his sword, and after he finished with them, he found that his stats had increased significantly. Then he noticed that his stomach wasn't making noises anymore. Greed realized that he was finally full after taking out so many monsters, and Fate thought that he had thought all along that one is only born with the skills given by the goddess. Greed told him that he had gotten to where he was thanks to the gluttony skill, which he hated, as it helped increase his stats and skills too much at the expense of experience, leaving him still at level 1 despite his high stats. He wondered that Greed had a lot of information, and Greed told him that they are similar in terms of skills, as he has the gluttony skill like him, which makes them harmonious together. Then he found the goblin hunters hovering around, and Greed told him that his skill must be kept secret between them, as it is a skill that defies the sacred law. Fate decided that he had to fight alone, but Greed told him that he was no longer alone now that their fates were bound together. He felt happy that his sword would recognize him as his master, and when he was about to leave, Greed told him that he had to collect goblin ears in order to profit from selling them and making money. After selling them to the guild, he was able to earn enough money for a fancy dinner. On his way, he bumped into a passerby and fell to the ground. He felt a girl put her hand on his shoulder and heard her cry for help and realized that this person had kidnapped her. When he used his recognized skill to check his stats, he couldn't figure out what skills he was using. Greed told him that he was using the hide skill, which makes him able to hide his skills even to those with the recognized skill, but he decided not to leave the little girl in trouble and went to rescue her. When he followed the kidnapper, he found him taking her to an abandoned warehouse, tying her up and telling her that she will become the Holy Knight's toy from now on, and continuing to intimidate and humiliate her. While Fate was hiding around and observing the situation, Greed warned him that this is his last chance to withdraw, as this person seems stronger than him, but he decided not to abandon the girl, especially after he got the power. Meanwhile, the children in the orphanage were having dinner together under the care of the nun, and she noticed that one of the children did not feel like eating his food. When she asked him why, he told her that he was upset about his weak skill, and that the goddess is not fair to give him such a skill, while giving holy knights and warriors super powerful skills. She told him that the world was peaceful before the goddess abandoned it, and everyone was equal. He wished he had been born at that time, and continued to cry while another nun searched for the kidnapped girl and found her nowhere to be found. On the other side, the girl was crying in fear until Fate appeared in front of her and told her that he would rescue her, and after he freed her, the kidnapper appeared behind him and told him that he would crush him for interfering in what does not concern him. Fate decides to confront him and not run away. At the same time, he thinks that he has to ensure the safety of the girl. Greed has an idea and tells him to pretend to run away to lure him and surprise him. Greed distracted him and then jumped at him and succeeded in wounding him in the face, which enraged him and made him use his power on his blade. Greed told him to focus his attack on the kidnapper's weapon, and when he did so, he was able to smash it easily and inflict severe damage. When the kidnapper fell to the ground and could not move, Fate began to question him and asked him who ordered him to kidnap the girl, and when he refused to say anything, Greed stuck Greed in his wound, so he had to tell him that Hado ordered him to kidnap her, as his favorite hobby is to terrorize and abuse children and use them as amusement tools. After he succeeded in rescuing the girl and leaving the place, he heard sounds coming from her stomach and realized that she was starving and decided to go to dinner together. And when he asked her name, she told him that her name was Sahara. Then they went to a restaurant and he bought meat skewers for them, and then he noticed her tears while eating, so he decided to give her his share of the food. And after they finished dinner, he took her back to the orphanage where she lives, and she rushed to the nun and hugged her tightly. When Sahara and the nun thanked him for what he had done for her, he lost his mind for a while and then told them that this was the first time he was thanked by someone. Then he approached Sahara and told her that no matter how difficult things are, if she can smile on her face, she will find happiness one day. And then he remembered that his father said the same words to him as a child, but he did not understand what he meant at the time. Then he said goodbye to her and left quietly. On the way, Greed told him that he had acquired his first technical skill, which would enable him to obtain secret techniques and arts that would give him the ability to attack his opponent twice in one blow. He realized that this is what the kidnapper was going to do, so he told him to attack his weapon and thought that he would die if the kidnapper succeeded in hitting him, and thought that he would not risk himself if he knew that. Greed told him that he was lucky, and that luck is a big factor in battles where there is no guarantee that the strongest will always win. So Fate decided to become stronger to be able to win without relying on luck. Greed then wondered about tomorrow being the first day of his new job with the Hart family and asked Fate if he was going to go to work in his tattered clothes, and Fate realized that he had forgotten to buy new clothes. Meanwhile, news spread that Mason Hart had fallen at the hands of a holy dragon in the city of Gallia, and Roxy would take his place in the family. The bar owner was worried about this, as Mason had been controlling the holy knights and preventing them from crossing the border, and did not trust Roxy to do so. One of the customers asked how Fate was doing these days, and he told him that he used to come to the bar every day after finishing his work, but he did not come today for some reason, and the next day Fate went to receive his new job after buying suitable clothes for him. Then he was impressed by the size of the palace and its vast garden and found Roxy in front of him, and then he admired her beauty while feeling ashamed, and she felt confused in turn. Then she took him to his workplace, and before that she went to her father Mason's grave to tell him about Fate. Then she told Fate that her father died a few days ago when he encountered a sacred dragon in the continent of Gallia that had not left its lair for 1,000 years, and Fate noticed that she was still trying to take care of him despite what she was going through and felt angry for his ignorance. Then Roxy said that from now on she would be in charge of the family after him, and asked him to work together to make this palace a better place. When she wanted to shake his hand, he remembered that if he touched her, he could read her thoughts, so he backed off and pointed his hand in a random direction, and luckily Haru, the maid, was on her way towards them. Roxy introduced them to each other, and Haru told him that she was the family's butler and asked him to behave in a manner befitting a Hart family servant. He was confused by her sharp gaze and sat down to eat with his new colleagues spontaneously, much to Haru's chagrin. A week later, he was mowing the lawn, and Oliver, the gardener, told him not to forget to take a break after finishing his work, and Minerva remembered that at first he thought he was just an eccentric who couldn't stop talking to his sword, and shook with joy when he ate meat. He told them that he hadn't eaten meat in 5 years, and while they were talking, they were surprised to hear noises coming from Fate's stomach. They wondered if they had just had lunch, and he was still hungry. Then Haru told him to go meet Roxy, because she wanted to talk to him about something. When he met her, they sat drinking tea together, and Roxy wanted to see if he was happy working at the palace, while Fate was distracted and wondering why he was still hungry even after eating. Then he was interrupted by the sound of her voice calling him by his shortened name, and then he remembered his father who used to call him by the same name. And when he told her this, she said that she considered him a member of the family now, which made him feel embarrassed that she was too nice to him. And when he asked her to call him by his usual name, she refused to do so. As soon as he got up from his chair, he began to feel dizzy and soon lost consciousness, and at night he woke up and found himself in his room, and noticed a letter on the next table, which turned out to be from Roxy, telling him to take a vacation tomorrow. He grabbed Greed and asked him why his condition had deteriorated, and that he couldn't stand the feeling of hunger like before. He told him that there was no turning back after he had tasted the skill of gluttony and the taste of souls and wanted more against his will, and that he was destined to go after souls to devour them until he died. He wondered what would happen to him if he stopped. Greed told him that he would either starve to death or lose control of himself and start attacking anyone he came across. He found that he would turn into a monster that way, and told him that when he got hungry, it would be reflected in his eyes. When Fate went to look in the mirror, he was surprised by the redness of his eyes. Greed repeated to him that there was no turning back anymore, and it was time to look for some prey. When he went outside in disguise, he found himself looking at people as appetizing meals, and Greed told him that this was due to the effect of the hunger-enhancing skill that allows him to use his gluttony effectively. Greed suggested that they go to the Goblin Forest, so he didn't hesitate to go there and catch as many goblins as he could, and then he headed out of the kingdom, where the goblins were gathered, and managed to crush them all easily. After he felt satisfied, he told Greed that he didn't want to feel that hunger again, so he told him that he would have to hunt monsters from time to time to feed his skill, and suddenly he felt a violent vibration hitting the forest and found the Goblin King wandering near him. When he used his recognition skill on him, he found that the difference in stats between them was not much, but he felt fear and disgust at seeing him feeding on remains of corpses. Then he gathered his courage and sneaked up to him to surprise him with a surprise attack and managed to amputate his arm. The Goblin King was furious and started attacking him randomly, but Fate kept dodging him until Greed told him not to be afraid of him and kept encouraging him to attack him. Then he trusted him and rushed towards the Goblin King and succeeded in knocking him down and defeating him. His stats increased dramatically, and he also gained the skill of regenerating health. Greed then told him that if he gave him his stats as a gift, he would evolve to a new level and could provide him with many features, but to Fate's surprise, he wanted to take away all the stats he had gained since they met, and when he decided to back out, he warned him that he might lose the right to carry him if he did not, and told him that he had to choose between becoming stronger alone or becoming stronger together. Fate decides to provide him with the strength he needs as his only partner. When he gives him his stats, he is surprised that his bow has changed shape and wonders where he will get the arrows to be able to use it. So he tells him to pull it back, and the arrow will appear on its own. When he found a monster wandering near him, he decided to try his new weapon on it, and succeeded in hitting it with an arrow that pierced its back, and when he felt exhausted, He decided to leave and collected the ears of the Goblin King and left them near the orphanage, where Sahara lives to help provide food for them for a long time by selling them. The next day, Fate was continuing his usual work in the palace garden and noticed an unfamiliar girl approaching the door. When he wondered who she was, he found that she was Roxy, but she looked different than usual, and he wondered if she intended to go out in those clothes and found that she had no choice but to tell him the truth. Then she approached him and whispered that she was going on a secret search mission around the town. He realized that she deliberately disguised herself for this reason and asked him not to tell anyone because Haru would reprimand her. But she caught him before he left and thought to include him in the secret mission and asked him to accompany her as she searched the kingdom. Roxy was excited about it as if she was going on a picnic, and when he told her to slow down and called her by name, she put her finger near his mouth and warned him to call her by her name in front of people. Greed laughed at her attempt to use her intelligence by choosing a name close to hers and told him to keep his mouth shut. Roxy thought he meant her and apologized for being annoying. Embarrassed, he told her he didn't mean it. She said she was excited about the idea of them going out, then realized what she had just said, and they both blushed as Greed continued to make fun of them. But Fate grabbed him roughly and told him to shut up. Roxy was furious and told him to stop treating his sword so violently. Then she realized that she had never taken a close look at his sword before. He thought that someone with such a useless skill would not normally carry a sword. Then he remembered that his useless skill had turned into a curse that would haunt him until he died. He decides not to tell her about his gluttony for now. Greed slips out of his hands and falls into Roxy's hands. When she takes a look at him, she finds that he needs more care and tells him that she'll introduce him to her family's blacksmith later. They spent the day wandering the market among the crowds, and when they came to a fruit merchant, Roxy was struck by the freshness of the grapes. The merchant told her they were freshly picked from the Hart family lands, and she tried them on with Fate, who was amazed at the taste. She confidently told him that they were grapes grown on their land, not realizing that she might reveal herself after the merchant heard her. So Fate tried to save the situation, and Greed told him to say that one of her relatives works for the family, and Roxy thanked him for saving the situation quickly. Then they were surprised by the appearance of one of the holy knights in the market, and everyone was looking at him with angry looks, as the holy knights have a bad reputation and are hated by everyone, even the lowest rank. And as he was walking through the crowd, Greed found that this was an excellent time for his appearance, so Fate told him to shut up, but his voice was audible until he reached the holy knight, who was furious. The knight approached him and found that he had no choice but to kneel and apologize, but the knight went too far and almost stomped on his head with his foot, but Roxy stopped him and told him that it was over with his apology. The knight looked at her with disdain for daring to insult him. Then he realized that her face looked familiar to him, and people began to recognize her, and Fate felt that he had put her in trouble, and Greed told him to pretend that they were lovers and cling to her, and people would not think that it was Roxy because there is no way she would get involved with a scoundrel like him. When she heard him repeat it out loud, she thought it was a good idea and clung to his hand and pretended he was her lover. He had to go along with it so he wouldn't get caught. The plan worked and people thought she was Roxy, since it's impossible for a holy knight to cook as well as she pretended. The crowd soon dispersed and the holy knight ended up standing alone, having no idea what had just happened. They took advantage of Fate and Roxy and hid in an alleyway. Fate, embarrassed that she was still clinging to his arm and close to him, realized he would have a hard time keeping Roxy company throughout the day because she was a pretty girl. Roxy went to a store and noticed a bright red stone, then was surprised to find that the merchant had a bunch of rough rocks and told her that he couldn't tell if they contained a gemstone unless he opened them. The sword told Fate that he would be able to find out thanks to his recognition skill, and warned him not to let the merchant find out about his skill. Then he found Roxy holding a blue stone in her hands, and she looked like any ordinary girl who admires gems and gives up being a holy knight. The merchant thought they were lovers and offered Fate a discount if he would buy it for her, but Roxy, knowing he was poor, declined and thanked the merchant for letting her look at it. After they left the store, she asked Fate if he had any acquaintances in the warrior class, and he told her the names of those he knew. She said that she would like to meet one of the current warriors, and then Fate was surprised that the news of the death of all the goblins in their forest began to spread among everyone and found that they thought it was a wandering monster. Roxy was curious about it and went to ask them what they knew, and they advised her that it would be best to ask the warriors. She asks Fate to take her to the place where the warriors are gathered, since that's the point of her secret mission, to investigate the wandering monster that caused the death of all the goblins, and Greed is surprised that she's looking for him while he's right next to her. In the evening, Fate went to dinner at the usual tavern with Roxy, and the tavern owner forbade them to sit in Fate's place, thinking that he had died from his work with the Holy Knights, but he was surprised to see him upon recognizing him, and Fate introduced Roxy to him under her nickname as his new co-worker. The bar owner is happy for him and admires his appearance after all this time with a girlfriend, and asks her to take care of him. Fate is confused and afraid that Roxy will be offended by his calling her his girlfriend, while Roxy breaks her glass out of shame. He also broke his cup so that she would not be embarrassed in front of the tavern owner, but he did not care about it. Then she asked him about the incident with the dead goblins, and he told her that he had heard rumors about an adventurer who eliminated all the goblins without harvesting their ears. Roxy guessed that it might be a wandering monster, as warriors always seek to collect goblin ears for rewards. He told her that this would cause trouble for everyone, especially merchants who have to travel and bring supplies and have no choice but to pass near the goblin forest. Fate realizes that he has caused a lot of trouble in the city because of his gluttony and greed with his sword. They are then interrupted by their regular customer, Odd, who, upon seeing Fate, panics and thinks he might be a ghost. After calming down and the duo tell him what they are looking for, he tells them that the current popular theory is that the wandering monster that caused the death of the goblins is Leech. Then they were surprised when he told them that the Holy Knights intend to move as soon as possible to deal with him, and Greed found that Fate is in a predicament because of him, as he has no chance against them, especially after he drained all the stats he gained during their time together. And the biggest problem is that Fate imagined Roxy joining Leech's hunting team and had to face her and may die at her hands. Then they noticed traveling warriors entering the tavern, and one of them approached Roxy and invited her to join them. Fate put his hand on his sword in anticipation of any attack, but he was surprised by her pushing him away with her super strength, which infuriated the warriors. Roxy decided to reveal her true identity since she had revealed herself, and when the warriors realized that she was a holy knight from one of the 5 families, they all knelt in front of her to ask for forgiveness for their lives. Unexpectedly, Roxy felt ashamed that the people she was sworn to protect looked at her as a source of fear, not safety, and told them that her father's dream was to live in a world where he could live in harmony with his subjects side by side while fulfilling his duty to protect them. The warriors felt the sincerity of her words and that she was different from other knights, and asked her to let them chat and spend some time with her, and Fate realized that she was a kind and humble person. After they finished their mission, they went to the Hart family blacksmith, and Greed was having the time of his life in the hands of the blacksmith, who took good care of him and made him look as if he was newly made. On their way back, Fate was curious to ask her how she didn't know anything about the Holy Knight's intention to hunt the monster. She thought that the Vlerick family's knights deliberately took care of it on their own without her. Soon they came across the Holy Knights on their way, harassing a young boy, so Roxy approached them and told them to leave the child alone, and Memel explained that they would take him under their protection. Fate approached and tightened his grip on Hato's hand, forcing him to let go of the boy and return him to Roxy, who decided to take care of him from now on. She asked Raphael why he didn't tell her about the wandering monster hunt, and he explained that he assumed she was preoccupied with her father's death. Hato glared at Fate and told him that scum should always act like scum before Raphael called him to follow them. After they left, Roxy felt bad hearing the boy express how much he hated the Holy Knights and apologized to him on their behalf. Then Fate asked him if he was really lost. The boy told them that he could not find his mother, and then they decided to help him. As they walked around, Fate remembered when he was lost as a child after his father died and moved to the capital, and luckily he found a holy knight who took care of him and gave him enough help, and he wondered what she looks like now, 5 years later. Roxy suggested that the boy stay at her house today and continue the search tomorrow, but soon they heard a woman's voice calling the boy's name Leo, and he rushed to her, and they left quietly. Fate was relieved and happy that the boy had found his mother. When he looked at Roxy, he was amazed at how beautiful she was at sunset. He kept looking at her until he felt that something was wrong, so he turned his face the other way and told her that they had to go back to the palace. After returning to the palace, they ended up being scolded by Haru for sneaking out of the palace. After returning to his room, Fate wished that it would be like this forever as he was having the time of his life. Greed told him that they had to do something about the knights hunting the wandering monster that is himself. Fate went to a store and noticed a distinctive mask, and when he used his recognition skill, he found that it was a magical object that manipulates the perception of others, and then decided to buy a raw rock for Roxy. The next day, he gave Roxy the raw rock as a thank you for hiring him, and that thanks to her, he has a good job, food, and friends he considers his family. When she opened the rock, she admired the stone inside and thanked him for his good choice. Then it occurred to her to give him something in return, perhaps a year's supply of meat or a sharpener for his sword, but he refused to take anything in return, and Greed felt angry and ordered him to accept the sharpener so that he could take good care of it. Meanwhile, the Holy Knights gathered to discuss the hunting expedition they intend to launch in the village of Gallia. At night, the warriors and goblin hunters went to hunt each other and make money, but they found that Fate had beaten them there and took care of them alone. They couldn't recognize him because of his mask and thought he was a wandering monster, so they fled before he came after them. Fate liked the idea of being recognized as a monster warrior, and Greed wondered if he wasn't done taking lives. Fate told him he wanted to get his stats up as much as he could before he clashed with the Holy Knights. The next day, he goes about his business feeling sleepy and realizing it's hard to lead a double life until Roxy approaches him and tells him they have to go on another secret mission. He ends up taking the train with her, and they pass the Hart family's land because she wants to see the grapes they're growing. They then went to her mother Aisha's house, who seemed to be sick, but she greeted them herself when she knew they were coming, and when Roxy asked about Fate, she told her that he was the newly hired servant at the mansion and brought him with her to get to know everyone here. Aisha welcomed him and signaled for him to approach, and he felt relieved that she treated him kindly like her daughter, and when he went towards her, she whispered to him and asked him if he liked Roxy, which made them feel embarrassed, so she justified her question that she wanted to know her opinion of him as his boss, and they felt relieved that she did not mean anything else. He gathered his courage and told Esha that he cared about Roxy and wanted to serve her until the last day of his life. She blushed and rushed into the house, which made him wonder if he had said something bad. But Aisha told him that she always used to run away when the situation became uncomfortable for her. She added that she still doesn't realize that she has grown up and become a holy knight, and is worried about taking over the family suddenly after Mason's death. Fate told her that she is a great knight and everyone in the kingdom trusts her and she is doing her duty well. Meanwhile, Roxy entered her room and felt nostalgic when she saw her things and pictures with her father and remembered when she was young, when she used to train with her father, who was proud of her for becoming a holy knight, while she aspired to follow his example. And when she returned to reality, she felt that she couldn't fulfill her promise yet. On the other side, Fate was helping the farmers gather grapes, and one of the farmers gave him fresh grape juice during the break, and they sat and chatted together. And when Fate mentioned Mason, the farmer told him that they weren't sure if Roxy would come this year after his death, as she used to come to help them with the harvest as well as hunting monsters. Then he added that she deliberately comes at harvest time because that's when the monsters are most likely to be out in public looking for food, and the monster they're facing this year is a kobold. As they were talking, they were interrupted by Fate's tummy noises, and the farmer thought he was starving while his desire to take lives was increasing due to his gluttony. In the evening, Roxy asks him to go home without her since she hasn't finished her work yet. On his way back, he comes across a girl with a large axe on her shoulder, so he decides to pass by her normally. But when he approaches her, he is surprised that her eyes are red, which means she has the same skill as him. Curious, he uses his recognition skill to recognize her, but he can't read any information about her. His thoughts are interrupted by the sound of her trying to talk to him. Then she backs off and continues on her way. When he asks her what she wants, she tells him that she came after the kobold monster but decided to leave it for him to hunt, and she tells him that he now owes her. After she left, Greed asked Greed who she was, but he was silent for a while and realized that he knew something about her that he didn't want to reveal. Then he found Roxy walking towards him and asked him to help carry the crops home. She looks at the girl and tells him that she is most likely from the continent of Gallia. When he tells her that he thought Gallia was destroyed, she tells him that it was destroyed 1,000 years ago after a wave of monsters arrived, killing most of its inhabitants and destroying their civilization. Then they decided to continue on their way home. He thought to ask her about the monster hunt and wondered if she would be okay on her own. She told him that she would not go alone, but would be accompanied by the warriors who work for her and would have no trouble. As she was boasting about it, she dropped the basket of grapes she was carrying, and he helped her pick up the grapes from the ground. The next day, the farmers were shocked to see that their entire crop had been devoured by kobolds, while Roxy and Fate went with some soldiers to watch the monster's movements and were soon surprised by a huge monster appearing out of the grass that looked like their leader. Greed felt Fate's urge to finish him off and thought Roxy shouldn't see him like that. When he checked the monster's stats, he was shocked to see that it was level 50 and had a terrifying record. Greed tells him that it's a crowned monster, a type of monster born from the accumulation of animosity over time. They decide to turn back and make a plan to defeat it first, while some of the soldiers think they have no chance against it. Roxy vowed as a holy knight that she would destroy it for them and dedicate her power to protect them, and asked the citizens to take refuge in a safe place and the warriors to prepare for battle, while Fate still thinks that fighting against such a monster is beyond his ability. But he cannot ignore what is happening to the Hart family lands, nor will he allow his lady Roxy to die. Fate decides to fight the monster alone at night, and when he sneaks into their lair, he finds that he is accompanied by warrior-class kobolds, so he decides to attack from a distance, using Greed as a bow, and continues to take them down one by one until he activates his gluttony. When he had defeated a large number of them, he approached the rest and engaged them closely, and although only the boss and his warriors remained, he found that the stats he had gained were insufficient to face the boss alone, so he aimed his arrows at them, but he was surprised that the boss managed to catch them. Greed warned him that he was about to use a secret technique that would crush his bones and internal organs, so he immediately retreated, and one of the monsters rushed towards him and managed to hit him in the shoulder. He pretended to be unconscious to loosen their defense, and his plan succeeded in luring one of them, cutting off his arm and then making Greed go through his head, at which point he offered to give him a new secret technique in exchange for only 10% of his stats. He accepted the offer. The sword evolved further and fired a powerful arrow at the boss. He managed to resist its power and execute a double attack on him, which succeeded in killing him and banishing him. Greed tells him that this is the result of eating the soul of a higher quality monster for the first time, and Fate begins to break down and lose control of himself as Greed tries to urge him to hold it together so that it doesn't get any worse. The next day, the warriors and Roxy come to investigate and are surprised to see kobold corpses everywhere, as well as the destruction from the last attack, and wonder who did it. Roxy returns home and tells Fate and her mother what happened. Fate feels badly that he caused the destruction of a large part of the earth, but is relieved to find that she thinks that the girl they encountered yesterday might have done it, while Aisha feels that her daughter is at her best when she's with Fate, so she decides to ask him privately. She decided to ask him privately to stay by her daughter's side and always support her. She told him that he doesn't have to be powerful or have the strength of a holy knight, and told him that what makes him valuable is his heart and his sincere desire to help her. Then she told him her story, that she was just an ordinary girl with little skill, but that didn't stop her from supporting her husband at all times. Then she added that her days in this world were numbered, and she wanted to check on her daughter with him, and told him that he could think about it for a while. On their way back to the kingdom, he pondered if he was really worthy of Aisha's trust, despite the fact that he does nothing but deceive everyone around him. And at night he realized that he was hungry even after hunting goblins. Greed tells him that goblins are no longer enough to satisfy his instincts, so he thinks that there are no monsters stronger than goblins, and he has to find stronger monsters, and he ends up wearing a blindfold over his right eye and becomes like Tokyo Ghoul and drowns in his negative thoughts about not being worthy of standing by Roxy's side. Then regular customer Ad entered the bar, and Fate was shocked when he said that the night Hado had decided to join the wandering monster hunt, and everyone was hoping that he would die fighting the monsters. Fate then marveled that the authorities were planning to send a new expedition to Gallia's lands, despite the fact that not much time had passed since Mason's death. Meanwhile, the authorities had already decided on the knights who would participate in Gallia's expedition, including Roxy. Before she left, she went to her father's grave and asked for his care during her journey to fulfill her duty. Then she was surprised by Fate standing behind her and asking her not to go because he was afraid that she would not return again, but she told him that she had already made her decision and left without waiting for his response, while he remembered the rumors he had heard about the matter and that the other families arranged the expedition to get rid of the only remaining nuisance from the Hart family. Meanwhile, the Valeric family knights were celebrating that their plan was going well. At night, Fate decides that he won't allow the holy knights to treat people like scum and continue their suffering when Hado's goblin hunters appear behind him, having spotted him from the bodies lying around, and he realizes that he has no choice but to confront them. Hado's henchmen wanted to take over, and he didn't mind, but when they rushed at him all at once, Fate felt like they were motionless. Greed told him that it was because of the huge difference in stats between him and them, then decided not to cause their deaths and just kick their asses in front of the shocked Hado. When Fate finishes beating his followers and looks back at him, the people behind him run away, and he ends up alone, feeling angry that someone like him can mock him and pretending to be brave despite his extreme fear that dominates his body language. Fate decided to reveal his true identity to him, which made him distraught and did not believe that someone like him had such power. So he told him that he did not have to explain anything to him, and Hado became angry and told him that he should not put himself in the same place with him as a holy knight. Fate asked him to show him how powerful the holy knight was, and when he used his recognition skill on him, he found that he had the holy sword skill, his strongest skill, and asked his sword if it could break the holy sword. Greed confidently told him that the holy sword could not be better than him, so he felt confident to beat him, while Hado underestimated him and decided to attack, but he was surprised by his speed after he found him standing behind him, and he was even more stunned when he saw his sword shatter before his eyes. Fate grabbed the remains of his sword and threw it in front of him on the ground, and ordered him to pick it up like a slave as he had done with him before, as he wanted revenge for his constant humiliation and insult, and Hado felt fear of his aura and kept retreating until he stumbled and fell to the ground. Fate approached him and told him that he was just a joke and pathetic. Then he grabbed his collar and decided to teach him a harsh lesson and started smashing his head with trees until his face changed from the severity of the injuries. So he begged him to stop what he was doing, which infuriated Fate even more that scum like him was begging for his life while he was treating the humans around him as entertainment tools, as he was the cause of sending Roxy to Gallia. Then he decided to throw him high into the sky and used greed as a bow and kept shooting arrows at him until he tore his body to pieces. But he deliberately kept him alive to suffer in his last moments and found Hado begging him to end it. After asking him about Roxy, he told him that she was the one who decided to go on the Gallia expedition on her own and wanted to go to save the lives of her people from the danger of the monsters there, then promised him that he would cancel her expedition if that would satisfy him. But Fate had already decided to get rid of him to avenge himself in his days of humiliation, and when he breathed his last, Fate gained all his stats, as well as the holy sword skill, and when Greed told him that he had become a holy sword, he said that the royal capital would never accept it and he didn't want to become one of them. He then decided to give the stats he gained from Hado to Greed in exchange for evolving to the second level, since he was disgusted that his stats were inside his body. After giving him the stats, Greed transformed into the shape of a scythe and told him that his blade was able to cut through anything created thanks to his curse. The next day, Roxy prepared for her journey to Gallia and said goodbye to everyone in the palace, and when she reached Fate, he almost confessed his truth to her in an instant, but he remained silent, so Roxy told him that they would meet again someday. After she left, Fate found that she had left a letter of recommendation for him in case he wanted to work elsewhere to stay out of the Valeric family's reach. But he decided to leave the mansion and secretly follow her to Gallia to protect her. Haru gave him all the money he had earned during his time with them, as well as his severance pay, and wished him well in his next move. As he left, he went to say goodbye to the innkeeper and Odd and told them that he would be a warrior from now on. In the meantime, Roxy gathered her army and gave them a motivational speech to boost the morale for the Gallia mission, telling them that the main goal of the mission was to take down the sacred dragon that had awakened from its slumber after 1,000 years. After she finished her speech, a warrior named Miria rushed towards her and expressed her enthusiasm to fight alongside her, only to be surprised by the presence of her teammate Mugen, who had already decided to volunteer and go fight the monsters with them. Miria thought he was just some weirdo who volunteered to get a chance to test his abilities, but he told her that's one of the reasons he volunteered, but the main reason is that he volunteered to avenge Mason. Roxy wondered about his family's attitude towards his decision to participate in the Gallia expedition and was surprised when he told her that his daughter asked him to bring some artifacts from there with him, and added that he comes from a long line of researchers, but he is the only warrior in his family, so Roxy decided to rely on him and Miria. On the other side, a researcher named Lane was experimenting in the lab with the bodies of goblins torn apart by the wandering monster, and her colleague told her that the goblins' injuries were not normal. Lane searched through the books to find out more about it and discovered that the goblins were hit by magical arrows from a dangerous black sword known as one of the 7 deadly sins, which seemed more interesting to her, and she was eager to find out more. The next day, Fate woke up to the sound of the driver telling all the travelers that they were approaching the city of Tetra, known as the City of Merchants, whose goods are shipped to the royal capital. And when Fate wandered inside, he found that it had not changed much from before, as he lived there 5 years ago and everyone treated him harshly. Then he found a driver preparing his carriage and asked him if he was going to Gallia, and the driver told him to come to him early tomorrow morning, as the monsters would attack him at night if he moved now. So he continued to wander around the city aimlessly, and Greed advised him to use his time to gather information. Fate ignored him and decided to eat some meat, and when he entered the restaurant, he found a man named Set begging some warriors to help him save his village and hunt monsters. The warriors laughed at him because he wanted to pay them a little money for their services. One of them threw his money on the ground, and when he came down to collect it, he stepped on his head and told him that he had to prove that he was serious if he wanted their help. Fate approached them and beat them effortlessly, causing them to run away when they realized how strong he was. When he saw Set in front of him, he remembered his cruel past, where Set and his friends used to bully him and throw stones at him as a child. Although his father was a skilled spearman and helped the villagers in times of need, but after his death, none of them refused to adopt Fate and take care of him, and threw him with stones and threw him out of the city. And when he remembered those painful memories, he found Set now kneeling before him, begging for help and remembering that this is the son of the chief who banished him from the city. Greed told him that he should calm his gluttony a little, and that his help would be in his favor. Fate decided to take care of the monsters attacking the city and fulfill Set's request, even though he still hated him and the people of Tetra as a whole. When Set and Fate returned home, his father scolded him for hiring scum like him to help them get rid of the monsters, and wondered how he could come back after he had already banished him. The leader then apologized to those who had asked for his help and told them that he would have good warriors tomorrow. But they thought they might not last until tomorrow because of the increasing monster sounds coming from the neighboring forests, so he decided to use Fate as a sacrifice to buy them time, thinking that he would die in the end. Set takes him home and apologizes for his father's behavior. Fate is curious about his wife, and Set tells him that the monsters have already taken her, and that all he has now is his daughter, for whom he is trying to make things better. Fate realized that he had changed from before and became a different person, then asked him to tell him more about the monsters. Set said that the first appearance was a month ago, and that they are monsters that can fly according to witnesses, and are not like the monsters they have dealt with before. While they were talking, his stomach was making the usual noises, so Set went to get him some food while Greed told him that the townspeople thought things would be solved by hiring some warriors, so he asked him if he had any idea what kind of monsters they were, and he told him that they were gargoyles, monsters that are characterized by their sharp intelligence compared to others. Fate found that her behavior is close to the kobold, and then interrupted them when Set's daughter noticed that he was talking to himself. So he gave her some candy and decided to play with her for a while, and after Set brought him dinner, he started eating, and suddenly he felt that something was wrong with him, and soon he lost consciousness. Set wondered if he had eaten something, and his daughter told him that she gave him a candy that her grandfather gave her, and he realized that his father was serious about sacrificing him to the monsters, while Greed realized that he had just eaten a drugged candy, and when Set looked through his window, he found that the monsters were on their way. The monsters start attacking the city and burning it to the ground, while Fate falls into a deep sleep and doesn't feel anything happening around him. Greed sits and thinks about what to do in this situation, while Set prepares a drink that can neutralize the effects of the drug. Then he poured it to Fate and succeeded in making him regain consciousness, and did not realize for a while what was happening around him, and when he came out, he found fire devouring everything and monsters flying around him in the sky, so he used the skill of recognizing them and found that they have the skill of shooting fireballs. He decided to use Greed as the second level, and when one of the monsters attacked him, he tried to cut his fireball, but he found that it had burned the entire tree, so Greed told him that he could cut the magic mixed with fire, but he could not cut the fire itself. Then he found the rest of the monsters mixing their fire to create a large ball and pointing it at him, so he tore the ball into fragments and reversed the attack towards them and succeeded in taking them down until only their leader remained. And when he found that he had a fire resistance skill, he thought to take the right opportunity to attack him closely. Before the monster could attack, Fate managed to split it in half and rob it of all its stats. The next morning, the village was in ruins, and Set found that his father was dead, with only a few villagers surviving with him. Fate found that the land was finished and the place was unlivable, so Set realized that he was using the recognition skill and asked him why he chose to become a warrior instead of relying on the recognition skill to make money. He replied that he had no choice but to fight. Set decided to go look for work in the city. Before leaving, he wanted to atone for his sins and asked Fate to beat him. Fate wanted to give him a light blow, but he was surprised by a powerful punch that knocked him down, Then he said goodbye to him and left to continue on his way to Gallia. Then he went to his father's grave and realized that his memories with him in the city were the only good thing about it, and he hated to see the neighboring village disappear despite all the tragedies he lived through, and he told his father that he would be fine from now on. Meanwhile, Roxy and her followers had arrived in an area known as Lanchester to supply the army with supplies. Mugen had warned her not to deal with the lord of that area, but she didn't understand what he meant at the time. On the other hand, Fate was feeling sleepy during the journey, which made the driver scold him since he paid him 3 gold coins for guarding him in the back during their journey, but Fate told him not to worry about it and that he was a good fighter despite his appearance to the contrary. Suddenly, a group of bandits appeared in front of them and ordered the driver to stop and give them everything of value in the carriage. Fate got out of the carriage and decided to confront them, and Greed told him that he should have asked the driver for more money. Before he could do anything, the driver clung to him and begged him to save him from the bandits. When they decided to rush towards him and attack him, an axe appeared out of nowhere and knocked them all out. It turned out to belong to this mysterious girl named Mine, whom Fate recognized as soon as he saw her. Then she approached them and told him that she needed a ride and reminded him that he owed her for letting him hunt the kobold monster alone. When she entered the carriage, they were surprised that she was unbalanced because of her weapon, but she quickly returned to normal after she restored her weapon to its original form. When he told her his name, he was surprised that she knew about his skill. She told him that she has one of the 7 deadly sins skills and is easily recognizable, and her special skill is rage. Then she told him she was hungry, so he gave her some dried meat he had and found she was going to eat it all. So he took what was left and found there was only a little left of his share. In the meantime, a girl was crying out for help while being chased by monsters until a handsome knight appeared, who managed to save her life and force the monsters to run away, which made the girl fascinated by him. And when she asked him about his name, he told her that his name is Rudolph and he is the lord of the Lanchester region. As Fate and Mine watched his show, the driver told them that he was preparing to welcome Gallia's expedition, which would be arriving here soon. Fate was surprised when he realized that he had been following Roxy and ended up arriving before her. Greed tells him that it makes sense to be faster than her, given the equipment and supplies her army is carrying. When the driver gives him his fare, he's surprised when Mine takes it instead, claiming that she saved him from the bandits. Then he thought he had to find a place to stay until Roxy's expedition arrived, but Mine fell asleep on his back while standing up, so he ended up carrying her on his back and walking her to the inn. Then he met 2 young men on his way, welcoming him to their city on behalf of Rudolph, and he wondered that people here are used to honoring their holy knights. Then he noticed a suspicious mark behind the neck of one of them. Halfway through, the guards prevented him from passing through a certain area, as it was for Lanchester citizens only. Fate noticed a different mark behind their necks, and over time he found that there were many different marks, which Greed guessed might symbolize different social classes within the town. In the evening, Rudolph arrested the 2 young men who had frightened the girl in the morning, scolded them for their actions, told them that the purpose of the festivities around town was to show that they were superior to the Hart family, and then tore their bodies apart with his sword and left as if he had done nothing. Fate found a nearby inn and booked a room for him and Mine together. He found that she was very tired and noticed that Greed seemed to know her well. He told him that they were old acquaintances who saw each other from time to time, and that her axe had the sin of laziness. Fate remembered that she had mentioned something about the weapons of the deadly sins. Greed then decided to tell him what he was as a weapon, and said that the 7 deadly sins that he and other weapons were created from were born by defying divine laws, and that gluttony and greed were one of the 7 deadly sins. Fate realized the truth about his powers and why they were considered a sin, and wondered why he was chosen to possess this trivial skill that caused him to be ridiculed and humiliated by people due to his constant hunger, and ended up continuing to fight for his life after gaining the power. When Greed found him feeling angry and resentful of his skill, he told him that this emotional turmoil could cost him dearly someday, and he might be eaten by his skill, and advised him to become strong to survive. At night, Fate went to a nearby monster hunting area, and Greed suggested that he should eat slowly to control his appetite. When a sand monster appeared in front of him, he tried to attack it from a distance, using Greed's body as a bow and advising him to use a fireball before firing an arrow. He then unleashed a thunderous attack on the monster and wiped it out, but another sand monster soon appeared nearby, but he couldn't fight his hunger and began to lose his strength. Meanwhile, Mine woke up in the middle of the night feeling hungry. When I came out of the room, I found a sign stating a reward for anyone who could eliminate the sand monster. Then I heard someone say that Rudolph himself couldn't get rid of it, but it would cause everyone to die if someone didn't do it. On the other side, Fate continued to kill sand monsters at a slower pace until his body began to get used to the rate of stats he was gaining. Then he smelled a glowing monster near him, and on the other side, the warriors were struggling against him and all their attacks failed. Fate appeared out of nowhere to prey on the glowing monster alone and continued to attack it, but the monster blocked him and created a sandstorm to keep him away. So he decided to use his level 2 greed to cut its body. After successfully tearing him apart, he noticed his essence sinking into the sand, so he used his bow and arrows to get him before he escaped and succeeded in finishing him off, after greed robbed him of 20% of his stats. Afterward, the warriors admired his strength despite his suspicious appearance, and thanked him for his help. One of them introduced himself to him as Bard, so Fate decided to introduce himself under a pseudonym. When he returned to the inn in the morning, he he was surprised to see Mine naked in the middle of the room. He was embarrassed, but she shrugged it off and accused him of having perverted thoughts, then told him she was going to go hunting sand monsters. He decided to give her half of his reward to calm her down, and when he received his reward from the syndicate, they found Rudolph on their way, surrounded by his followers, and told him that he had become his servant after he had defeated the sand monsters. Mine approaches him and tells him that he has no right to do that, so he starts making fun of her for being a child trying to tell him what to do, and before he can finish his sentence, she throws him away with her axe, and Fate tells her that she will cause them trouble after she attacked the city lord and decides that they must flee quickly from here. After Fate notices that she eats more than he does, he momentarily suspects that she may have the skill of gluttony rather than anger since she finished half of the supplies they bought before they reached their destination. She told him that anger burns a lot of calories, which makes her want to eat a lot of food, so she wonders where the food she eats goes, which makes her feel angry and wants to attack him. Mine caused the carriage to crash due to her anger, and while the driver was repairing it, Fate saw her heading towards a nearby village alone and realized that she was acting as she pleased without caring about her surroundings, and when he followed her into the village, he found that it was a very peaceful place, although it was closer to Gallia's monsters. Then he noticed a large castle at a distance from him. Greed told him that it was Hausen's castle, so he approached a person and asked him where the mayor's house was, and this person told him that he was the leader of this village, and Fate noticed that he had a sacred sword. When the knight Aaron realized that he intended to stay in the village for some time, he challenged him to a duel, and he soon noticed that Fate tried to use his recognition skill, and Fate was surprised that he recognized him without realizing it and found that his stats exceeded 2 million even though he was still at the first level. Fate was forced to accept his challenge and drew his sword in preparation to face him. They began to clash, but their fight did not exceed a minute after Aaron managed to force him to drop his sword, and Fate thought that he did not want him in his village, but Aaron told him that he felt a purpose behind their meeting. Aaron agreed to let him stay in the village in exchange for training under his supervision during his stay. Fate was surprised by his sudden desire to train him, but Aaron explained that it was just an old man's whim. Then he added that he feels that his body is not used to the strength he has acquired, as he cannot counter the recognition skill and does not fully utilize his other skills, so he will be able to fight against monsters, but will have difficulty against humans. Greed is skeptical of the idea that he wants to train them for free, but Fate decides to accept the offer as a trial run. After they shake hands, he sees Mine wandering around and recognizes her as a high-level warrior from her appearance. After Fate guided her to their place of residence in the village, she fell asleep while he spent the time practicing with Aaron. Aaron decided to start practicing hand-to-hand combat with him and told him that it was the best way to control his stats. When they started practicing, Fate was surprised at how fast he could move and attack, and Aaron advised him that he should relax his body while fighting to gain the necessary speed and strength. Over time, Aaron noticed that his eye color had changed, he was moving better, and he was able to read Aaron's movements in slow motion. In the evening, they finished training, and Aaron told him that they would practice for the actual fight tomorrow. Fate smelled the smell of a monster coming from the direction of the castle, and when he heard Aaron's voice inside, he rushed towards him and found Mine sleeping after eating all the food they had. When Aaron was on his way home, he looked at the castle and felt sad for a moment, while Fate looked at the picture on the wall and was surprised that he had a young son. Greed told him that he looked a bit like him and guessed that there was a reason why Aaron was staying in this remote village. The next day, Rebecca practiced with Aaron using a wooden stick while he used his holy sword and asked him to block his attacks with the stick, thinking that the stick would break in one blow. But when Aaron attacked him, he was able to block his attack without breaking his stick. In the evening, Fate told him that he had decided to leave tomorrow for Gallia, and when he asked Mine to thank him for what he had done for them, she ignored him and continued to eat. Fate apologized for her rudeness, but Aaron told her to let her eat as much as she wanted. Then she told him that all food was the same to her now that she had lost her sense of taste. Then he heard Greed tell him that this was the price she had paid for her skill. Aaron turns to the castle again, and Fate thinks to ask him about it, and he tells him that it was once his castle, but 15 years ago, while he was on a mission abroad, the castle was occupied by a glowing monster born out of hatred. Since then, the castle has been ruled by the Lich Omen and his family has been trapped inside. Fate decided to go to the castle and free it from the monsters. Aaron told him that he would join him and that this was a good opportunity for him to relieve the memories of the past, while Mine decided to protect the village until their return in exchange for 50 gold coins. After heading towards the castle, they started taking down the monsters one by one, but as their numbers increased, they became trapped, yet none of them were able to stop them, and when they reached the second floor inside the castle, Aaron was surprised to see his wife and son still alive and waiting for his return. He approached them and talked to them for a long time, feeling overjoyed that everyone was okay, while Fate wondered what was happening around him, and when he asked Greed, he told him that they were inside a spell and they were actually dead, but they looked like the living. While Aaron was talking with his family, his son Luke wanted to surprise him with a surprise attack, but luckily he blocked him, so Luke moved away far enough and expressed his anger at being left alone to protect the castle for years until the monsters got him, and now he wants to return to them to reunite the family. Fate decided to use Greed's scythe to cut through the illusion, but warned him that it would require taking their lives, and that souls consumed by greed do not pass on to the next world, but remain in eternal torment with no hope of redemption. Luke and Aaron clashed, and Fate asked him to let him deal with his family in his own way, so he decided to find the lich and get rid of it. He headed towards her rooms filled with zombie corpses and felt his presence in the place. Then he noticed a flash coming from a certain area, and when he attacked it, the lich appeared from its hiding place and found that its statistics exceeded 1 million in addition to controlling the corpses who begged him to save them from torment. And after he found himself trapped among them, Eren intervened and cut off their limbs to immobilize them. When he looked at the body of his wife Diana, he remembered the last time he saw her and Luke before he left on his mission. They asked him not to leave them alone, but he promised them that he would return after he took care of the monsters, and he wished he had thought about it again. He then used his sword to cast the Grand Cross spell, ending the suffering of the corpses and wiping out the lich. Fate noticed Luke's sword lying nearby and used it, combining his power with Eren's to destroy the lich and free Luke and Diana. After their souls were freed, their spirits appeared to Eren to express their gratitude for his return to save them, and Eren gave him a souvenir to rest in peace and then hugged them before their souls ascended to heaven. And the remaining lich almost interrupted this moment, but fate stopped him in time to get a good farewell, and Eren promised them that he would join them after he finished what he had to do. After they left the castle, they found many skeletons waiting for them in the courtyard, so they decided to race to get rid of as many of them as possible, and they fought until the sun rose the next day. When they returned, they found Mine angry that they were late, so Eren decided to give her an extra amount on top of her wages as an apology. She told him that he would need the money to rebuild the village, but Fate did not understand what she meant, but she told him that he would learn that if he lived longer. Eren then remembered that he had met her before, as he had seen her 50 years ago when the monsters appeared one day in the village, and Fate was surprised that she looked older than her current form and still had a high level of abilities. She told him that he could reach her level after 1,000 years of training, so he thought to ask her how she got that much power, and she said that she is just a ghost who does not allow him to die. And before Fate left, Eren told him to come back again after he finished what he had to do because there was something he wanted to tell them. Meanwhile, Raphael succeeds in finding the Philosopher's Stone, which can cure any disease or injury, and Memel is excited that his idea of immortality is getting closer and closer to reality. Then the servant entered, and when Raphael asked him if he had managed to find Hado, he was shocked to learn that he was dead, and according to the witnesses who were with him, the cause of the extermination of the goblins was not a wandering monster, but a warrior, and Raphael was furious at the fact that someone deliberately got rid of his brother. Fate and Mine continued their journey to Gallia, and he was frustrated to find that she had eaten all the supplies Eren had given them to sustain them during their journey, so she decided to give him some meat so he wouldn't get angry. Then she approached him and fell asleep on his leg, and within seconds she fell into a deep sleep while he was talking to her. He asked Greed what she was fighting for when he remembered what she had said. Greed preferred to keep quiet and told him that he would find out on his own if he continued traveling with her. On the other side, Roxy and her army were about to arrive at Hausen Castle to take a break. When they saw the castle up close, Roxy remembered that Eren used to live there, so Miria asked her about the current lord of the castle, thinking that Leech's monster was still in control of the castle. Mugen knelt in front of Eren and expressed his pride in meeting him in person. Then Roxy apologized for their sudden intrusion into his castle and was surprised that he knew her name. He told her that he was an old acquaintance of her parents, and they asked him to give her name when she was born. Mugen was jealous that a hero like him had named her, so he told him that he had become a former hero as he decided to retire after losing his passion for fighting after the death of his family, and after 15 years he finally succeeded in getting rid of the Lich thanks to the help of a young man. Roxy was curious to know his name and told him that she needed to know who he was in order to report to the capital how the monster was eliminated, but he refused to tell him because he made a promise not to reveal his identity to anyone. She apologized and was about to leave when he asked if she intended to go to Gallia even though she hadn't mentioned it. He told her that there was no reason for a holy knight like her to come all the way here, and then he suspected that the Vlerick family had sent her. She told him that she had chosen to volunteer for the mission, and he realized that they had manipulated her into going to Gallia. She told him that she intended to protect everyone in the town and follow in her father's footsteps. Eren was surprised to learn of Mason's death and offered to train her so that she could survive in Gallia. Roxy gratefully accepts his offer, and her followers begin to help clear the wreckage of the castle during their training, while Roxy decides to use the opportunity to become stronger and fulfill her duty to protect her people. On the other side, Fate and Mine went to an abandoned place, and Mine told him that this is the place where she was born and lived before moving to the imperial capital, but she doesn't remember much about it, so he remembers that Gallia collapsed 4,000 years ago. As they continued on their way, Greed found a large cocoon, and Greed told him that inside was a biological weapon tested by Gallia's military in the past, known as the Chimera, and realized that Mine intended to destroy the cocoon and fight what was inside. He uses his recognition skill and finds the stats are too high. He can't figure out what the skills are. She says it's still growing and is easy to defeat. They'll have to damage its body, but it won't die because its essence is in a safe place. Realizing that she wanted him to use his gluttony to devour the Chimera's soul, she jumped into the cocoon without waiting for his response and attacked. And when she made a large crack in it, a mysterious girl awakened from her slumber inside the body of a giant monster. Fate realizes that she has eyes like his red eye and stares at him intensely. Mine warns him not to look directly at her, or he will be unable to move, and tells him that this girl is the essence of the chimera and he must get rid of her. He remembered that if he ate her soul, she would suffer eternal torment. When he refused, she told him not to be fooled by appearances. She was just a monster in human skin, and they would die if they didn't get rid of her first. He thought about using Greed's scythe to cut it, but Greed told him that it was an indirect attack and he wouldn't be able to cut it, so Mine used her axe to reverse the lava towards the chimera and succeeded in damaging it. The chimera's body remains standing despite taking damage, so they decide to attack it separately. Mine amputates its arm, while Fate uses Greed's bow to freeze its leg, but it quickly regenerates its arm and neutralizes Fate's arrow. Fate was surprised that Mine's strikes became stronger over time. Greed told him that her weapon was getting heavier and more powerful with each swing, yet the chimera had begun to evolve into a completely different level of power. Mine asked him to stay behind her, and he imagined Roxy was trying to protect him. He felt ashamed that someone was protecting him despite his strength and felt he had no right to claim that he was helping Roxy. He decided to unleash his power and told Mine that he was going to starve soon. She warned him that his gluttony could overcome him if he wasn't careful, and he began to go on a rampage while trying to control it inside him until he was ready to fight back. Mine then played the role of bait while Fate took advantage of the chimera's distraction and jumped to a high altitude and began shooting arrows of various properties at him. When he was able to freeze him, Mine boosted her power to inflict maximum damage. Before they could finish him off, the girl formed a protective barrier around them, and Fate decided to use his scythe to cut through it. But when he failed, Greed told him to focus on the weakest point of the barrier with his recognition skill, and managed to break the barrier and damage the girl. Greed then prevented him from continuing his attack on the chimera, and the monster took the opportunity to run away. But his red eye was bleeding badly, and he realized that he had reached his limit. But Mine told him to climb on her axe to throw him into the sky so that he could finish off the chimera before he regained his health. As he was flying through the air, Greed offered to let him use the second level of his secret technique in exchange for 20% of his stats. Fate accepted his offer, and Greed became stronger than ever, then told him to aim for the center of magical power. He thought he should aim for the girl, but he was surprised to find her inside the black barrier. Greed told him that she intended to burn herself with him, so he decided to devour her before she died, and then he succeeded in launching thunderous attacks and making the scythe pierce her chest. Suddenly he found himself watching her memories by looking directly into her eyes and couldn't understand anything before she died. After he devoured her soul, he felt a sadness that was unlike his usual, and Greed told him that it was because he had devoured one of his peers, which made it no fun. Afterward, Mine buried her, and he asked her if she knew her, and she replied that she had forgotten everything over the years, but the only thing she knew for sure was that when someone turns into a chimera, they have to die before they cause too many people to die. He thought that he might face the same fate someday, so he asked her to take his soul if he ever lost control of himself. She approached him and hugged him and promised to fulfill his request. Then he decided to separate from her to go to Paptalan, while Mine wanted to stay to rebuild a village here. She then expressed to him that she felt she would find him dead when they met again because he had sacrificed much of his stats in exchange for upgrading his sword to level 3. He asked her to help him hunt some monsters to increase his stats again, but she refused and ignored him completely. In the evening, Fate arrived in Babylon and kept looking for the gate in the huge wall in front of him, and during his search he realized that Greed knows a lot about the city, as he came to it with his former bearer before he was killed, and then told him that the entrance gate is located in the north. As Fate wandered through the city's market, he was amazed at the higher food prices than the royal capital, and as he wandered, he was surprised by the arrival of Roxy's expedition to the city. So he put on his mask before she noticed him, and then he heard a mysterious girl behind him vowing to make sure that Roxy dies in the city, and then disappeared into the crowd. Roxy was greeted by Norden Alistair, the knight in charge of Babylon, and realized that he was the one who had been in charge of the city in her father's absence, and felt ashamed that he could not save him even though he was by his side. When they shook hands, Norden looked at her with gratitude, which made Miria angry, and when she wanted to intervene, Lugan stopped her and told her that messing with a holy knight would cost her her neck. Then Roxy decided to walk around the town with them, and on the other side, Fate was suffering from the high prices of everything around him and felt that he would not be able to live in this city even if he was rich, as this city is like Dubai in our time. While walking around, Greed stopped him near a store after he noticed a distinctive-looking scabbard, and Fate hesitated to buy it, thinking it would be expensive. Then he encountered the owner of the store coming out to check the situation outside, and Fate was surprised that he rushed towards him as soon as he saw him and kept carefully examining his clothes and equipment. The shopkeeper recognizes the burns on Fate's robe, and Greed tells him that he has a good eye for detail and can be trusted. When Fate asks him about the price of the scabbard, Greed tells him it's just a demonstration model and offers to make a custom scabbard for his sword. Fate gives him the sword, and the merchant is amazed at its appearance, which makes Greed smug, while Fate is shocked and feels openly robbed when he tells him that it will cost him 500 gold coins to make a scabbard for such a sword. Fate quickly left the shop and decided to forget about it and focus on making ends meet in this extravagant city. On his way, way, he came across a group of warriors offering to join them in hunting monsters. They thought he was just a novice warrior who wanted to build his reputation to go and work as a volunteer soldier in the capital. But when he showed no interest, they thought he was just a novice warrior who wanted to build his reputation to go and work as a volunteer soldier in the capital. One of them apologized and told him that they assumed he was a low-ranking person like them because of his rowdy appearance. Then they continued on their way to the desert, and Greed told him that if he wore proper clothes, idiots like them wouldn't mess with him. Then he decided to follow them to hunt some monsters and earn money to buy new clothes. And he kept walking towards the mountains until he reached the border of Gallia and started smelling a terrible smell. And Greed told him that it was the smell of monster corpses scattered around. And soon he found spores of algae flying in front of him, and Greed warned him to take a deep breath so that the algae does not grow inside his lungs. Then he found a large group of monsters rushing towards him, a species that is widespread throughout Gallia, and Greed advised him to deal with them as if he were fighting humans, as they are characterized by intelligence and strength. But before he decided to fight them, he found the group of warriors rushing towards them. He decided not to steal their loot and waited until another wave of monsters appeared in the opposite direction and went to get them on his own. When they attacked him, Greed transformed into a huge level 3 armor to protect him and told him that he could block all physical and magical attacks. After he managed to crush all the monsters in his path and got a lot of stats, he noticed that his gluttony didn't drive him to rampage like every time, and he didn't want to take more lives, which he thought was the result of Aaron's training. He then took the monster ears and returned to the Babylon Guild to sell them. To the amazement of the other warriors, he was able to collect enough for 2 teams on his own, which made the warriors who were hunting monsters with him jealous, and one of them claimed that the monster ears belonged to them. When he reached out to take the bags, Fate grabbed him and broke his hand, then started kicking the asses of the rest of the team and caused great chaos inside the guild. And after the supervisor brought him his reward, he was shocked to see Roxy standing right behind him and giving him an angry look. When Miria told her that his story was consistent with the witnesses' statements, they restrained the warriors, and Roxy decided to pardon him even though he overreacted, and then told the warriors that she would overlook the matter because she was responsible for the lawlessness in the city in exchange for them having to spend 1 night in jail. Fate noticed that he was looking at Roxy normally without having to look up, and realized that he might have suddenly grown taller. Then his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Roxy talking to him, and Miria was angry that he wasn't listening to her and wanted to take off his mask, but he kept pushing her away. Roxy told her that he didn't need to take off his mask and just wanted to know his name, so he had to tell her his nickname, and although she didn't like it, she told him not to cause too much trouble in the neighborhood. But what made him feel shocked and frustrated was that she advised him to pay more attention to his appearance. Embarrassed, he rushed out of the guild and kept walking with his head down because of her words, but he was relieved that she didn't know his true identity thanks to the mask. Then he found the owner of the hardware store rushing towards him after the news of his beating the group of hooligans started to spread around. He introduces himself and tells him that his name is Jade Stratos, and he opened his shop only 3 months ago and offers to give him equipment to wear during his battles. He realizes that he wants to use his goods to promote his shop since it is still a new shop. Fate found no reason to refuse his offer, and they made an agreement together, and then Jade made him a special gear that made him look like a prince, and Greed finally got a scabbard that suited him, but he was surprised that Jade wanted to get 80 gold coins for the gear, as he thought he would take the gear for free in exchange for promoting it. And when he realized his hesitation, he agreed to reduce the price by half. After he left the store, he felt that he would not be able to save much money in this city. Then he found a bar full of people and thought it was a sign that they were serving special food. And when he approached the entrance, he saw a beautiful girl. Everyone was flirting with her, but he was surprised by the feeling of control that overwhelmed him and that he could not take his eyes off her. So Greed told him indirectly that she was using her skill against him. Then the girl approached him and welcomed him, and he was shocked that she was able to recognize him even though he was wearing a mask, and even more shocked that she could also read his thoughts, and told him that the reason she recognized him was because she was one of his peers and possessed one of the 7 sin skills. Then she introduced herself as Eris. She then asked him to remove the mask as his ability would not work on her. When she stared at him closely, he had the same feeling of attraction and control, but he looked away, and she told him that what he was feeling was a side effect of her skill. She told him that she had been watching him for a long time before he gained power and became a big deal, and she thought about going and talking to him a few times, but she held back because she was sure he would meet Greed someday. He asked her if she knew much about Mine, and she said that they didn't talk much since they were from different generations and didn't get along anyway, then thanked him for taking the trouble to get rid of the Chimera monster at the time because it was too much trouble for her. Fate realized that she knows a lot about everything, so she told him that she still doesn't know who moved the cocoon to where he found it, and that there are still a lot of them in Gallia, and they will be dangerous if they grow. She then told him that the main reason she was waiting for him was because she was a guardian of the kingdom and would do anything for the kingdom. When he asked her what she was up to, she told him that she wanted to get rid of Roxy. Fate was outraged by her despicable desire, so she told him how the phenomenon of hatred between monsters works, and said that the same thing can happen with humans due to the oppression and discrimination that the Holy Knights practice on the commoners. She added that this would cause hatred to accumulate and fester within the people, and if the death of their beloved knight was added, their hatred would devour the hatred that already existed and result in the birth of humans with new strength, and from them would emerge those who could protect the kingdom in the future. Fate is unconvinced by her poisonous theory of how Roxy's death will affect the future of the kingdom and tells her that no good will come from her death, as she is the only one who cares for others and looks out for their interests, and he will not allow her to die. The next day, Roxy's army lost contact with the forces that went to Gallia to collect raw materials, so she decided to go to where they went to rescue them. And on the other side, Fate was in Jade's shop, who asked him to bring magic crystals to help him make the perfect scabbard for his sword. He wondered where he could find these crystals, and Jade told him that there were some in Gallia, so he decided to go get them himself, and Jade decided to give him a discount in return, and also gave him a map that his master used when he was a warrior, and told him that most of the crystals are located near the Great Valley. When Fate arrived at the destination, he used greed as a shield to block the monsters and attack them at the same time, and continued to crush them and increase his stats, while on the other side, Roxy and her companions found it difficult to reach the Great Valley as the compass stopped working, and the sky was too cloudy to use the stars. Roxy remembered that the largest monster colony was farthest south, and decided to follow the density of monsters to reach the Grand Canyon, and told them to be careful on their way in case they were attacked. In the evening, Fate sat down to take a break after crushing a large number of monsters, and while he was sitting, he fell asleep and found himself in a strange dream where he was in an indistinct place, and standing in front of him is the girl who was inside the body of the chimera. Then he noticed her lips moving, but he could not hear her. Suddenly, everything around him changed, and he was standing in a pool of blood and corpses, and found the ghosts of Hado and the kidnapper appearing underneath him and clinging to his legs, and soon they began to pull him towards them until he drowned in the pool of blood that he had created. Horrified by what he saw, Fate woke up and felt a strange aura approaching him. He realized it was a glowing monster, and when he used his night vision skill, he saw more than one salamander coming his way. He used Greed's bow and managed to take out one of them. He noticed that the salamanders weren't trying to run away or attack him, as if someone was controlling them. On the other side, a group of salamanders suddenly attacked Roxy's army camp. Then the monsters began to set fire to the camp until everyone began to disperse from each other, and Roxy almost died if not for Mugen's timely rescue, and they found that the heat of the fire is so high that the ground is melting. Then Myria tried to attack one of them with her sword, but she was surprised that physical attacks do not work with them, and she ended up falling to the ground after she received a painful blow. So Roxy approached her to help her, and one of the monsters almost burned them all at once, but Fate intervened at the last moment. Roxy thanked him for saving them, and then they introduced themselves to him, and he told them that there was no need to thank him. Then he noticed a suspicious mark on one of the monster's corpses that looked like a logo. Then they found the same logo on one of the monster's corpses. Mugen told them that it was suspicious because glowing monsters don't usually work as a team, and they realized that the monsters seemed to be deliberately targeting Roxy, while Roxy thought it was just a coincidence. Norden told them that many strange events had begun to occur since the sacred dragon had left its lair. The next day, they all headed towards the Great Valley, and Roxy wanted to shake his hand before they parted ways, but he hesitated to touch her hand so as not to activate her telepathic skill. Myria grabbed his hand and found that she wanted to tell him that she was the one who had to protect Roxy and not to think too highly of himself because he had the power, and after they left, Fate headed towards the forest to start looking for the magic crystals. He wandered through the forest until he found a petrified monster in front of him. He thought it had something to do with the environment of the forest, which seems completely different from the rest of the area. In time, he found the monster's graveyard and was surprised to see a petrified human face among them. Then he remembered Jade's description of the crystals as transparent and emitting a violet-colored aura, and he kept looking for the description until he saw Eris standing at a distance from him, and before he decided to watch her, he found that she had gone away, and when he went to where she was standing, he was surprised by the presence of one of the chimera monsters. Then he noticed that his chest was empty and realized that it was just a body buried in the forest. He decided to look closer and noticed that the ground had changed shape in the area around the chimera's body, and that some monsters may have woken up and left a long time ago. Fate wondered if Eris was behind the chimera's awakening, and was soon surprised by a violent earthquake to the east and rushed there to check on Roxy. Meanwhile, Roxy was facing off against the chimera monsters with Myria, and soon Mugen and Norden collapsed around her, and when one of the monsters almost attacked her, Fate intervened just in time. He then noticed that the monsters were slowly regenerating and were not at the same level as their previous counterparts. He then told Roxy everything he knew about the monsters, and that their weakness lies in their essence. They then decided to take them down together. During the fight, he guessed that she met Eren and taught her some techniques from her fighting style. Then they succeeded in defeating all the chimeras around them, and he felt in harmony with her even though it was his first time to fight beside her. Then there was only one left in front of them, but they were surprised by him jumping to a high height and when he landed with his speed, he caused the ground below them to collapse and they ended up falling into the unknown. So he picked her up and told her that he could withstand the fall. After a while, he regained consciousness and found Roxy lying on top of him, and he answered her spontaneously when she called his name before she woke up. He felt he was in trouble, and to add to his confusion, he lost his mask and kept looking for it to put it on before she saw his face and finally found it. He then used the fireball skill to illuminate the place around them and felt angry that they were close to getting the last chimera monster, and when he asked her about the supply unit she was looking for, she felt frustrated and answered him that their military base had been burned to the ground and there was nothing left. She then asked him where he got his information about chimeras, and he told her that a survivor from Gallia had given him enough information about them, and he realized that she knew Mine's physical description when she described her to him and said that she had encountered her before in her region and had heard some rumors about her on her way to Babylon. Staring intently at him, she told him that one of the rumors was that she was traveling with a guy wearing a skull mask. He couldn't help but acknowledge it and wonder why she seemed so happy about it. She told him that there was something about him that reminded her of someone she knew and made her feel like he was right next to her. She asks herself if the things she did for him were right, and if he's happy right now, and he tells her that he should be happy to have someone like her who cares about him. While they were talking, he was surprised by the sudden awakening of his gluttony, and when he noticed that his eye was red, he covered it and ran away, and while he was running away, he felt that the chimera was close to him and soon attacked him suddenly, and for some reason he imagined the monster inside him as if it were Roxy, but he managed to pierce the essence and rob the monster of his soul and continued tearing him until he was sure that he was dead. When he saw the same logo on the monster's head, he realized that someone was after Roxy specifically, and that it was Eris who was the sole beneficiary of her death. When Roxy approached him, they were surprised when the upper part of the cave collapsed and the magic crystals that Fate was looking for appeared, and he was surprised to learn that the crystals were originally the product of fossilized monsters. They were able to return to the surface after Fate collected the necessary crystals and met the rest of the army in the forest. Meanwhile, a mysterious person wearing a mask similar to Fate was roaming the Grand Canyon in search of something. A month later, Roxy suddenly decides to challenge Fate to a duel in front of everyone after they return to Babylon, and when he asks her why, Miria tells him that he is accused of violence against 56 warriors and 20 reports of destruction of property. Roxy says she can't tolerate any more violent conflicts. He asks her what he's supposed to do, and she offers to join the royal army so the warriors will stop coming after him. She decides to challenge him to a fight and throw him in jail after she teaches him a hard lesson. He has no choice but to confront her and decides not to take greed out of his sheath. She warns him that she has no intention of going easy on him. Fate deliberately avoided attacking and blocking her blows and realized how strong she is as a holy knight, and that she has many skills thanks to her daily training, and Roxy took advantage of his distraction during the fight and managed to scratch part of his mask. He realized that she was after his mask and wanted to reveal his identity to everyone. She asked him to take it seriously if he didn't want to reveal his identity, and was amazed to see him using the sacred sword technique on his sword. He told her that he could do it thanks to his special scabbard that enhances his strength. She thought that he might be a former holy knight, but he told her that he was just a warrior, and then he suddenly lunged at her to attack, but she was able to block him, and then he noticed that she was wearing a butterfly necklace and found that she had put the gemstone that he had given her in it. Roxy took advantage of the gap he had left and succeeded in forcing him to drop his sword, winning the fight. She then asked him why he was so careless, but he pretended to be foolish and that he had no idea what she was talking about. Then it occurred to her to ask him if he had gained his skill and fighting style by practicing with Eren. Then she remembered what he had told her about him and that he was the reason for his decision to pick up the sword again, and she was curious to know his true identity, but he told her that she should focus more on protecting herself inside Gallia, and left without waiting for her response. Fate was grateful that she still worried about him even in the face of life-threatening danger. His thoughts were interrupted by Mugen admiring his skills and strength, and that he had managed to take down the Chimera monster on his own. He told him that someone was controlling him after seeing the same emblem that was on the body of the salamander monsters, and was surprised when Mugen told him that he recognized a monster inside the Chimera as its essence, and Mugen told him that his family had studied the lost technology of Gallia for generations, including his father and daughter. Fate suggested that he let his daughter examine one of the Chimera monsters so that they could draw accurate conclusions, and Mugen was furious, thinking that he was trying to indirectly recognize his daughter. Meanwhile, Mugen's daughter Lane was in her lab thinking about what happened to Raphael after Hato's death, as he locked himself in his room and studied the Philosopher's Stone all the time as if he had gone crazy. Her colleague told her that he found the stone on his trip to Tinburn some time before Hato's death. She searched in her books about the Philosopher's Stone and found that it can heal wounds and give its owner tremendous power in exchange for controlling his mind and body. so she kept thinking about what Rafal was after. In the evening, Fate sat thinking about what Mine had already told him, that he had to reach the E field, a certain level of power that would allow him to fight the sacred dragon, and if he thought about pushing himself too hard without reaching that power, he would die. Suddenly, the alarm bell sounded, and the entire city of Papillon, and on the other side, Norden came forward and told Roxy that a death march of monsters was coming their way, and she decided to intercept them immediately before they arrived. Then the process of evacuating civilians to a safe place began while Fate headed towards the direction of the march. And when he saw the royal army led by Roxy rushing to confront them, he decided to let her handle it without interference. Then he suddenly began to feel hungry, but he managed to control his gluttony. Greed notices that something is sneaking up behind the royal army. When Fate takes a look, he sees a mysterious monster swimming underground like a whale in the water. He decides to attack before he reaches Roxy and succeeds in pulling the monster out of the ground. It turned out to be a huge water monster with the same logo as the previous monsters, so Fate decided to find out who was controlling it. And when he used the recognized skill, he found that its stats exceeded 10 million, making it a glowing monster. Greed asks him to use his armor and is able to block his acid attack. Fate finds that his attack is a combination of acid and corrosion magic, which makes him unable to fight at close range, so he decides to use his bow and shoot a fiery arrow at him to vaporize him. After a while, he finds the monster has disappeared and thinks he has managed to get rid of it, but he is surprised by the monster flying behind him and rushing to land on him. Greed realizes that he has split himself to avoid its attack. Then he finds 3 copies of the monster rushing towards him at the same time. Realizing that they were just a distraction while the real monster was on its way to the royal army, he decided to wait for it to reappear on the surface. As it approached the surface, Fate gave 20% of his power to Greed and aimed his super arrow at it. Fate succeeds in killing the monster and devouring its essence. However, he finds another clone waiting for him. When he looks up, he sees a mysterious person wearing a mask staring at him and suspects that it might be Eris, and decides to go check for himself. As he jumped towards the person, Greed noticed that he was holding the black pistol sword, one of the 7 Sins weapons with the Envy skill, and realized that he was the one controlling the creepy monster, and that's why he was still alive without an essence. When the monster attacked him, he deliberately did not dodge it and decided to destroy it from the inside after realizing its nature. Then he went towards the person he thought was Eris, and Greed advised him not to push himself so that his skill would not work greedily and tried to attack him, but he was easily blocked. Greed told him that his stats had reached the highest level a human could reach and that he would have to ascend to non-human levels through the E field to be able to face this mysterious person. He tried to approach him and attack him with the blade, but when he heard the person's voice telling him that he was wasting his time, he realized that he was not Eris. Then the person pushed him away and started firing projectiles at him with his sword. Unfortunately, he was unable to block them with Greed's shield and realized that he had no chance against him, so he decided to unleash his gluttony and prepare for all eventualities. After Fate is in the E field, he rushes towards the mysterious person and starts hitting him. He can clearly see his projectiles and continues to approach him until he manages to tear off his mask, at which point he is surprised that his opponent is Norden. Norden tells him that this is half the truth, and although he has been exposed, he is more cautious than Eris, of course. He then blows his flute and summons the sacred dragon and orders him to go to where Roxy is. He decides to precede him to her, but Norden intercepts him with his monsters. In the meantime, Roxy was fighting the march of monsters with her army, and when she saw that the holy dragon was approaching her, she decided that it was time to avenge her father and prepared to attack him, but the dragon attacked first, and Fate appeared out of nowhere and used Greed as a shield to block him, but the dragon continued to attack him until his mask was torn, and then Roxy recognized him immediately and found that he could not lie anymore and turned to her to make sure that her vision was correct. Roxy realizes that Fate is the one with the red eyes and tells her to leave immediately before the dragon attacks them again while he buys her some time, then apologizes for having to lie all this time before rushing towards the dragon without hearing her answer. When Norden found Norden waiting for him on top of the dragon, he decided to use Aaron's technique and put Greed back into his sheath to use the Great Cross skill and bind the holy dragon, then rushed towards Norden and attacked him while admiring his skill and using a skill he had never seen before. Fate told him that they could now fight mano a mano. Fate felt his strength drop, but Norden told him that it was because he had entered the E field by force and was eating up some of his strength to maintain that level, and that he hadn't decided to fight him seriously yet. Greed tells him not to let him move freely and tries to get as close to him as possible, while Norden laughs at his reckless attacks and soon realizes his plan to keep him close so that he can keep the dragon restrained. Noticing Fate's confusion after his plan was revealed, he took advantage of his distraction and managed to amputate his arm, then told him it was time to pay for the chaos he had caused. Before he could finish him off, he was surprised by a blade piercing his back and realized that Fate had deliberately used illusion magic to trap him before slicing him in half. After gaining Norden's stats, He found himself in the dream again and saw the chimera girl again, this time telling him that she tried to warn him last time, but he didn't listen. She then told him her name was Luna, thanked him for taking her soul, asked him not to grieve for her, and apologized for not being able to keep him safe anymore. Suddenly, the floor collapsed beneath him, and a lower hell containing all the humans and monsters whose souls he had eaten awaited him. Then he realized that his gluttony was calm and balanced thanks to her, but she said she couldn't support him anymore because if he ate the soul of the sacred dragon, he would lose control of himself, and before he fell into the hell he created, Greed caught him in his true form. After saving him, Greed tells him that he must return to reality quickly. He tells Luna that against all odds, he cannot allow the holy dragon to roam freely without its master, and when he returns to reality, he realizes that Greed was once human. Greed wondered if he had a plan since it would be difficult for him to use a shield or bow with one arm. Fate decided to throw Greed at the dragon and aimed him right at the center. When he hit the dragon, he jumped towards it and used the punch of destruction. Then he picked up his sword again and used his recognition skill, and when he found himself superior in terms of stats, he jumped towards him and ripped his wings to the ground, and then rushed towards him and succeeded in splitting him in half thanks to his power boost, and knocked him back to the ground to put him back where he was. Immediately after devouring the holy dragon's soul, his body began to collapse, and he tried with all his might to control himself so that he wouldn't become a bigger threat than the holy dragon, and that's when he decided to make the most difficult decision, to give all his stats to Greed to turn into his maximum level while he goes back to 0 again. He then told him that he couldn't do it anymore, and that with his stats back down, his rampage would no longer be a serious threat. He soon passed out next to Greed, and after a while, Mine approached him and told him that she didn't expect this day to come so soon. Fate tries to get up and begs her to end his life before he turns. Mine doesn't hesitate to fulfill her promise, but before her axe can reach his neck, Roxy's screams stop her, and she rushes to his side and protects him. Fate was surprised that she still wanted to protect him despite his condition, and begged her not to look at him as he never wanted her to see him like this. Roxy started crying and asked him if he thought this would be enough to make her hate him, and told him that he would still be the same in her eyes regardless of the power he wielded, and asked him not to try to commit suicide. Fate was surprised that his gluttony had subsided just by looking at Roxy and hearing her words. Then she extended her hand to him and told him that they should return to Babylon together. He felt grateful and happy that she accepted him as he was, and did not hate him as he expected, and he realized that she was the one who saved him in the end, and not the other way around, and he fell unconscious from relief. When Fate regained consciousness, he found himself in an inn room and looked at his amputated arm and remembered the conversation between him and Norden. And when he wondered how long he had been asleep, he found Eris entering his room with Mine and telling him that he had been asleep for a whole week. Then she approached him and gave him Greed, who scolded him for leaving him behind in the barren desert, and found that his condition was bad despite the great strength he had gained. Eris told him that they had to go to the Gallia Center to get it after Mine forgot to carry it with her. Mine said that she was dealing with Norden's envy weapon so that he would not find himself another vessel and cause them more trouble. Fate realized that Norden's weapon was controlling him and not the other way around. Greed said that he had no idea that an envy weapon could control the mind of its user, and Mine confidently told him that she had thrown the weapon to the other side of Gallia since it was impossible to destroy it. Eris then told him that she needed his help after he proved his worth by defeating the Holy Dragon, as she had backed out of her plan to create a glowing human with Roxy's death, and he asked her to swear that she wouldn't come after her again in exchange for his help. She tells him that it was the envy weapon that came up with the idea in the first place, and that she thinks she's stupid for agreeing to such a thing. She then tells him that the town is about to enter a new era and will need his help for what comes next, and that he's in no position to refuse as all those with the 7 deadly sin skills have to take over. Fate agreed to help her, hoping to find out why he had acquired his gluttony from birth. He was surprised when Eris told him that she would take care of his arm and he would be able to get it back, and asked him to leave immediately before Roxy returned, as it was dangerous to be near her anymore, as his gluttony flared up at the sound of her name. Meanwhile, Mugen and Miria were having a mock fight in front of people. Then she ignored him and went to Roxy when she saw her, and Roxy asked her to take care of things in her absence, then went shopping and chose the best vegetables and fruits for Fate. But she was surprised when she did not find him in his room and found that he had left a letter apologizing to her on the table for his sudden disappearance, and that he had not told her before about the skill of gluttony, and told her that he had to leave now and promised her that he would return to her again someday, and she felt worried about him to bear the burden of his strength alone. She remembered their first meeting when he was homeless in the capital and did not find anyone to help him, and was afraid that she would beat him like the others. So she apologized to him after realizing that people are afraid of holy knights, and when she heard the sounds of his stomach, she brought him enough food and told him to return to his family after he finished eating, and he told her that he did not have a family. Then he decided to leave after he finished eating. She asked him if he had a place to stay, and he told her that he was homeless, but he realized that the capital is not a bad place and expressed his happiness to meet a nice knight like her. Then she remembered that this moment gave her the ability to hold her head high and take pride in being a holy knight, and decided to become stronger until the time she met him again. Meanwhile, the news had spread around the world that Fate was the wandering monster that people thought he was, and when Memel told her brother Raphael about it, he did not care much and decided to return to his room to continue his research. And then he was overjoyed that fate had caused Heido's death and gave him a golden opportunity to apply his research experiments on him. After that, Fate was able to regain his arm after giving Greed 40% of his power, and told him that this is his magic technique for level 4, which is to heal all injuries and restore lost organs. And after Eris and Mine made sure he was healed, they decided to return to the capital.